Okay, so the goal, let me share on my screen then the ones we have already. We'll start off by going through the couple of quotes, just to understand the mechanism of going through quotes, okay? And we'll start to get an idea then of the prices. So we can see that people have put up, we've got 3 quotes that have been put up there. We'll start off with that, and then as you have questions, throw out the questions, and we'll work through that. So we have 3 quotes. We have one for a 5.16, just over 5K, one for 6, and one for an 8.7. Okay, now I know last week when I was talking, I was saying that the average system size is actually slightly below 5. If you look overall nationally, it's, you know, so that's more typical. In terms of the limits of the system you can put on, you can go over that. Like there is a limit in terms of the size of the inverter, but then you can oversize in terms of the number of panels. And often installers will say, if you're putting in a 5 or a 5.5 kilowatt inverter, you can go to 8, 8.5. Some will even push maybe even to 9 kilowatts of panels. So it is possible to have a little bit of a, you don't have the same, when we talk about system size, that's the system size for the panels, but then the inverter itself may be smaller than that. Okay, so we can see the thing. Okay, let me just quickly go over the brands that we're seeing coming up here, first of all, okay? Solax, Solus, and Solus. Okay, very common brands, very middle of the road brands. It's like the Toyota Corolla, we'll say, of your inverters. The reality is the vast majority of inverters in the Irish market are Chinese made. In other markets, like in France or Germany, you'll see a lot more European manufacturers. You'll see Solar Edge, you'll see Fronius, you'll see FNA. But in the Irish market, it's mostly Chinese panels is what you're seeing. And they're fine. You know, Soluses, I have a Solus myself, Solax, there's truckloads of them gone in the country. It's not an issue. It's not something that I'd be concerned about. Okay, so the brands for the panels then, we're seeing Suntech, Jinko, and Jinko. Again, Jinko is the one you'll be seeing, I don't know in terms of market share, but definitely in the Irish market, very, very prevalent. Of course, this is a question of what you can get from the wholesalers as well, because you've got about 5 wholesalers in Ireland at the moment. A lot of them are selling the same brands. You know, there are very few that are actually doing anything outside the main market. So you're seeing Jinkos, you're seeing Longies, you're seeing Suntech, you're seeing Recon, same brands again. Okay, now the brands for the batteries, we're seeing Dynas twice, and we're seeing Triple Power. Now I don't know Triple Power. Dynas again would be that kind of middle of the road kind of well, let's say between entry level and middle in terms of pricing, but very prevalent in the market as well. Very, very common Dynas. So nothing to, the only question I have there would be Triple Power battery. I don't know it. So there, you know, that's you probably would need a little bit of digging around if somebody was interested in that.
There's a possibility I may have misread it, and because I was panicking trying to get all the information.
Okay, no panic. There's no punishment. Okay, now, so from a comparison point of view now, let me see what else is there. You're including a hot water diverter. Okay.
Yeah, Colm, just on that there, I have none in there in mind. That's future proof energy, right? Well, what he said to me was that you're buying that eddy, is that what you call it? Is for the water, but he said a time clock will do exactly the same thing. A time clock it'll probably cost you between installing it and buying it about €100, and it'll give you the same. This is what he says to me now. You know, this is what he said.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like the eddy is, now that we're in a situation where you get a feed-in tariff, you can get paid for anything you don't use. And if you're in a system where you have a battery, so, you know, as in excess power that's not being used is going into your battery first of all, and then over that you're going to get paid for it. That's a completely different situation to where we were 2 years ago when everybody was getting an eddy. 2 years ago you weren't getting paid for any electricity in excess, and batteries were more expensive, so there weren't as many batteries around. So an eddy or a hot water diverter, eddy is just one of the brands, okay, but it's the most common brand by far. So people talk about it, they use eddy in the same way as people use Hoover to talk about vacuum cleaners. It costs about 650, 700 euros. I'm not sure it's really worth it anymore. As you say, a timer on your immersion, or the fact that it's in if your battery is being filled, you can just turn on the immersion when you need it and it'll take it directly from the battery.
Yes.
So I would agree. Now, I will say though that in some cases where people do have a large hot water requirement, if you're a B&B, for example, I have had B&Bs and they're just very happy to have a lot of hot water. And the eddy will take it's a bit more intelligent than a timer. So it depends on the different situations. If it was purely, from my point of view, from a domestic home, I wouldn't necessarily recommend an eddy. I think if you have a battery, that's you already have a good flexible system, and you can get, if you want to get hot water, you can get hot water from your solar, from your coming directly from the battery. Okay. Now,
Colin, just another point there. You was talking about the battery, that triple power battery. I think that was. I have another quote, but I didn't put it up because it's actually coming to me tomorrow, and I'll put it up after that. Then, 4,130 euro for that battery. That's that triple power battery.
4,130.
Yeah, that's what's down total price of the battery. And
right.
Yeah.
Now that is very expensive.
Yeah.
There's no question that's a battery, a 5 kilowatt hour battery. Now, of course, there are two costs in a battery. The battery itself shouldn't be costing you more, like the 5 kilowatt hours shouldn't be costing you more than 2,300 euros for the battery. The extra cost on top of that is your inverter. Do you remember last week I'd spoken about the difference between a system without a battery can live with what's called a string inverter, which only takes, all it does is just the DC to AC conversion. And that's considerably cheaper than a hybrid battery, a hybrid inverter, which does the DC to AC and also manages all of the battery, the smartness involved with the battery. So the inverter is quite a bit more expensive, a hybrid inverter. So that price, it'd be interesting, the 4130, if that included, if it's a 4130 for a 5 kilowatt hour battery, that's very expensive.
Yeah, it's a 5 kilowatt. It's 5
That's
kilowatt.
what I have here. I have the quote open here in front of me, and it's 4130.
Okay. Right. Which to me seems like with a Solax inverter, which is separate, and that's not the same. That's not included in the price of the battery, is it? The hybrid inverter side of things.
That's
no,
separate column, yeah.
Yeah.
Additional items is what I have here.
Okay.
Battery storage system total price. Provide and fit battery storage of 5 kW 4130.
Okay, that's you're talking 800 euros a kilowatt hour, because that is what it comes down to. When you're looking at battery prices, you're looking at the price per kilowatt hour of capacity. Okay, that is the yardstick you'll go by. And if you're talking 800 euros, because basically when you get a battery, going back to the reasoning for getting a battery, you'll get to use more of your own electricity because it'll store it when you don't need it, and you'll be able to use it when you need it. Every time you put in a kilowatt hour and export a kilowatt hour, it's costing you money because you paid something for your battery. So the cost of your battery is going to tell you how much you're adding on for each one of those kilowatt hours that you're using the battery for. So basically, if you're paying 800 euros per kilowatt hour, it's very difficult to make kind of a financial case for it. We should really be down around, you should be below 500, you should be like 450 or lower per kilowatt hour. So that is, like, straight away I would say that's expensive. Now, I suppose you can see as well, if you look at their price, the overall price, let's just talk about the price for a second. Comet Renewables, 14,000 for a 5 kilowatt system. 5 kilowatts, just over 5 kilowatts, 5 kilowatt hour battery. Now, there is an eddy in there, so let's say 700 euros. So that would be 13,300. And 13,300 is about, before the grant, to me, that's about 2,000 euros more expensive than it should be for an equivalent kind of system. So here price-wise, that seems to be, I would say, about 2,000 euros too expensive.
Like, I can give you the breakdown there if you want of what they provided me.
Yeah, sure thing. Hang on, let me get. I'll stick up the form. We'll fill one in, okay?
Yeah, well, I mean, this was Comet Renewables. Now, if I filled it in wrong, I filled it in wrong. So they're saying for a 4.3 kilowatt system, 12 panels, that's 9,260.
Okay,
additional cost to increase the rate to 12 panels, which is 5.16, is an extra €630.
Okay, now let me just get this right. So you said a 4.3, and that's 9,250.
260.
260, okay, yeah. And that then is with Comet.
Yeah.
Was the inverter brand the Solix as well, I suppose, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So the panel sizes, did it say what they were? They were probably 435s as well. Did they say the brand of the panel?
Hang on, so there was 3 or 4 different attachments that they sent me.
Okay, well, you know, we won't get hung up over for the moment. We'll stick it in. And the battery size, you said then was a 5 kilowatt hour, yeah?
Yeah.
And then the brand then was the
triple power,
power as well. Okay, so that's obviously what Comet Renewables are doing. Okay, and then what's your roof, Gillian? What kind of roof is it? Slate, tile, flat roof, ground mount. What are we talking about?
I think it's slate.
Okay. And we include a hot water diverter. We'll leave out the date. I'm going to say yes in there. My own email address. Go on, and then we'll do submit.
But like the battery is extra. The battery is 4,130. So.
Yeah. So that's you can see like if you add on, it's the same pricing. You add on 4,130, add on about another €700 to get up to the same size as that, and then you're up to they're using it's the same pricing mechanism anyway. So that probably is Suntech as well down there. So yeah, so price wise, like I would say, let's look at the next one here, the future proof. This one here. Now basically what I was saying was where I consider the market is at the moment. Let me zoom in here a little bit to give you some chance of being able to see this, okay? Market at the moment, as far as I'm concerned, if you're getting a 5 kilowatt system, you should be getting it for, I would say, 11,500 should be the max. You know, for a 5 kilowatt system, the 5 kilowatt hour battery. Now, I then calculate everything from that. You know, I either go up or down in terms of size to get a rough idea. Like, so let's say, for example, here, if you're adding on another kilowatt of panels to that, you should probably add on about, let's say, 800, 900 euros. So let's take my example here. If
I actually call them just on that one there, on the future proof energy one there, that 6 is what that was is actually 14 panels. He was given 2 extra panels with it because he just felt it on that. That's what brings it up to whatever 6.2, I think it is, kilowatts.
Okay, right.
And that was in that price. That's that price is for that 11,015.
Right.
That covers 14 panels, like.
Right. So, like, I would say if I was to take this as my baseline here, if I was to kind of say, well, where should the market be, and then you should allow it to compare. If you go up to 6 kilowatts, I would add on another 900 here. My battery is the same as that there, so I would say I would have expected it to be around about 12.4, something like that. He's coming in at 11.2.
Yeah.
So I would say there seems to be, I consider that to be a good price.
And that price includes the battery, does it?
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's 900 per kilowatt extra. Okay. Now, if we look then at energy panels,
Yeah,
okay.
I should. This is Mark. I should say the reason I have a quote from them, and I don't think you had mentioned them, was on my Electric Ireland bill. There was are you interested in solar? Click here, and I put down the information, and then got a call back from this company. I mean, I realized eventually it wasn't just Electric Ireland gauging my solar interest. It was they had passed this off to a company that they do all their stuff with. You probably are aware of this. And I just decided to go through with it because it was the easiest way for me to get some kind of quote.
Absolutely.
And so I got this quote. It's very clear that they're high priced and conventional product. The battery, for example, just so you know, which was we spec'd out at 10 kilowatts for whatever reason, was I think over €8,000.
Okay. Well, listen, Mark, it's a very good exercise because that is, we'll see this all across the board. If you're going with the official partners for electricity supply companies, whether it be Activate, who are with SSE Electricity, whether it be Energy, who are with Electric Ireland, you will get skinned. That there is no other way of saying it. You know, that's, you know, now what you will get is you will get more peace of mind. They will probably give you payment options that you can be able to take it off your bill. You know, there'll be things like that. But in terms of the cost of the system itself, you will get skinned. That's like, you know, if you look at, let's go through that price there just to see what I compare, even with my conservative kind of calculations, where we should be on a system that size. So if we're talking about an 8.7, so I'm going to start off my 1500 as well. I'm going to add in 3.7 times 900. So let's say about €3,400 for a bigger system. I'm going to add in another 5 kilowatts. So like I say, that should be about 2,300 there. So that price, as far as I'm concerned, shouldn't be coming in any higher than this plus this plus this. Shouldn't be coming in any higher than 17,200. And they're coming in at 24,000.
Yeah, no, I put this together pretty clearly. And from what you've discussed tonight, it's pretty clear that, in fact, though they included the diverter, that's probably something that wouldn't be of interest. I do have one battery-related question I'd just like to ask. I came to understand in talking to them, and I must say they were very helpful and they spent a lot of time with me. It was a good exercise, if nothing else. They're not going to get any business from me, I suspect. But in Ireland, it seems, unlike back in the States, if the grid goes down, even if you have a battery, your system goes down. And I'm trying to understand now if that's true or in what way that's true. Okay, maybe I should just shut up and let you try and explain.
No, I'll give you an answer which fits the Irish market. It's true and it's not true at the same time. Okay,
that sounds very Irish.
Yeah. Now, what happens when the grid goes down? If you have a battery, your panels go down. Okay.
Yep.
If the grid goes down, your panels cannot produce electricity. There is, they call it the fireman switch, or they call it a shunt. And basically it's to protect, if the grid goes down and you get some electricity worker working on the line, they don't want any panels pumping electricity out. They think they've turned off the power, but there's power actually coming from the house. They won't allow that, right? So that's one thing. The grid goes down, your panels go down. The other thing is, if the grid goes down and you have a battery, your battery stays up. So you can get power from your battery. Now, there are a couple of ways you can get power from your battery. One is with a, what do they call it, an emergency power switch, socket, which is basically you can have a double socket wired directly to the battery via the inverter. Because the inverter will
they told me about this.
Yeah. So what that gives you in the simplest form is the grid goes down, there's still power in the battery, which is powering the inverter. That socket will still remain live. So you can plug in the idea being that you plug in your freezer, you plug in your internet router, you plug in your kids' games console, whatever's needed to keep yourself sane while the grid is down. And that'll keep on going. Okay, that's the simplest way. That typically is mentioned. And actually, I'm just thinking now, I should have thought that you should. I should have asked you to put that into your quote. That wasn't included specifically for the emergency power socket, which is, you know, it's good you're asking the question, Mark, because obviously it's a bit disappointing if you pay a considerable amount of money for a solar system, and then if the grid goes down, you don't have any power. But that shouldn't be the case. Now, so that is one case where you get power from a socket beside the battery. That means your fuse board, your distribution board is down. Okay, nothing else is working. Only what you plug into that socket is going to work. That's the cheapest solution. Usually costs about 150 euros, 200 euros, that kind of thing for putting in that socket. Now, if you want to go a little bit more resilient, let's say, you can have what's called a changeover switch, which allows you, basically what it allows you to do is it cuts off your house from the grid, and it switches the supply of your distribution board, that your distribution board is being supplied only by the inverter. So that when the changeover switch, and we're talking about a manual activation, when the changeover switch is activated, that then your entire house will then run from the inverter and the battery. Again, only the inverter and the battery. You won't be getting from the panels. Even if it's a sunny day, if you have no battery, no juice. That's just the way it is. Okay, now the changeover switch is more expensive, 700 euros, 800 euros, that kind of price. Some installers are a little bit cagey about installing them, because every so often ESP Networks comes out and says, oh yeah, we don't want you installing changeover switches. And then things will go a bit kind of quiet. And then sometimes installers will say, well, we won't do it when we're doing the initial installation. We'll wait until you get the grant sorted out. We'll come back 2 weeks later. We'll put it in then afterwards. That, they can work around it that way. So that is like, if you want to build in resilience into your system, you should be looking either for the emergency power socket, which is the cheap option, or the changeover switch, which is basically your house is being run off the battery. Now, one thing to note, when your house is being run off the battery, you can't live as if you have the grid. Because if you have a 5 kilowatt hour battery, okay, the maximum power you can draw from that battery is 2.5 kilowatts. That's pretty much across the board. Every battery in a domestic situation, its maximum power output is half the capacity of the battery. So if you have a 10 kilowatt hour battery, you can draw 5 kilowatts. It's one of the advantages of going for a bigger battery if you have the finances. It gives you more instantaneous power from the battery if you're in a battery only situation. Okay, so the reason I'm saying that is there is a limit on the power. You've no limit. If you're on the grid, you turn everything on in the house, everything will work. Whereas if you're off the grid, basically, you've turned over the changeover switch, you can't run everything. You can't turn on the washing machine, the tumble dryer, the oven, everything at the same time. You will max out. Now, what actually happens when you max out? Does your inverter shut down? I don't know exactly what happens, but it won't work.
That's okay.
There will be a maximum output in your battery.
No, this is very helpful. You said this is a manual changeover switch. Do you literally have to go and flip it?
Yeah.
Okay, this is definitely very different than the system that exists in the States, or at least what I've got with a battery at my house. It's all kind of seamless. I don't know. It's obviously regulations and all kinds of things. And I do have a Tesla Powerwall battery, and that may make it somewhat different as well. And but it's I don't even know when the grid goes down and I'm running off of the battery. And I assume the panels are cut off at that point, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I would say.
But anyway, I just need to know what happens here so that I can buy a system with, without being an idiot.
Okay, now I'll go back and check with a couple of installers about the changeover. I think the changeover switches I've seen have always been manual changeover switches. Some people use them in houses, even if they don't have solar. If the grid goes down, they can plug in a generator and they can run their house off the generator. That kind of thing. I've only ever seen manual ones. I'll check and see if there are. If in the market we do have automatic ones, or if there's a regulations reason that doesn't allow us to do that.
No, thank you. That would be super helpful. And I think this is because I suddenly had questions about the value of a battery, but I think this answers that. It still has battery. It still has value.
The battery gives you resilience. That still works from that perspective. Okay, there's nothing to worry about from that point of view. Okay, now let's go back into to our quotes there. So we've seen the good, the Well, we definitely we'll call it the good, the bad, and the ugly. So far, future-proof energy, that price, we'll consider that to be a good price. But that's the kind of prices are out there in the market. Like I've seen these kind of prices. So, and Comet Renewables just does seem a little bit more expensive. That does seem to be, to my mind, 1,500, 2,000 euros a bit more expensive. Energy panel, no question about it. I would say 7,000 euros too expensive for that kind of price. So the method, what I want you to do is look at the method that I'm going through there. Like I'm starting off at my base price, and then I'm adding on more panels, or I'm adding in more battery, and I'm saying, well, then I should be around about, like in the slides I gave you last week, I gave you that rough picture about what a 5 kilowatt system with a 5 kilowatt hour battery should cost you. And then how much does it cost per kilowatt extra? How much does it cost per 5 kilowatt hours of battery extra? How much does it cost for the eddy, with or without? And then that should bring you into the zone where you can say, yeah, no, that's expensive. That's too expensive. Okay, now do any of the other people who've joined in, any of you have other quotes you'd like to share? Or any questions on what we've gone through there? Or any other brands you've come across, or anything coming from the quotes?
Can I ask you, Colin?
Yeah, go ahead,
what would be the difference in price between a hybrid inverter and a string inverter?
Probably about 800, 900 euros.
Okay.
You can look. Actually, what I'll do is I'll give you links to the wholesalers, because there are a couple of wholesaler sites who will give you wholesale prices. So it gives you, you can get an idea from that. Let me just throw one up here on the screen. So actually, I'll show you. It's a relatively new wholesaler in West Clare, Western Solar. I think they should have prices here. Now, one thing I would say here on these prices, like for example, they'll give a price for a panel. The panel itself, it costs about the same as much as the mounting system for a panel costs about as much as the panel itself. So when you look at a panel, let's go in here and look at the panels, Jinko panels. There we go. You look at the panels here, you kind of go, okay, let's take an example here. 440s. Let's see if we have our 430s. What else do they have? There we go. The 435. Very, very common is this one here. And you can see there 99 euros ex-VAT. So let's say 125 euros including VAT for 435. So if you multiply that up, you would go, let's say to get to kilowatt, go 2.5. So you're saying, hang on a second, for 360 euros, I should get a kilowatt of panels. Whereas realistically, that's not, the panel is only one part of the story. I'm just saying that because people sometimes get a bit annoyed and they kind of try and take installers to task saying, I'm being ripped off, a panel only costs this much. You do have to take into account the mounting systems are almost as much as the panels themselves. And then there's the labor as well, on top of that. So now let me see if they have in this, let me share this address with you as well, okay, since we're at it, just so you can have a look at it. Now let's go and have a look at the inverters and see if we've got, okay, so they have Huawei, Kilowatt, and they're the only two they have. Huawei is a different case in terms of if you're comparing string and hybrid inverters, because a hybrid inverter does two things, okay? It does the typical work of the string inverter, DC to AC, and measuring and monitoring the grid and all that kind of stuff. The hybrid inverter adds on that extra battery management side of things. So in most brands, those two features are in the same box in the hybrid inverter. Whereas with Huawei, they have an inverter which is a string inverter. And when you get a battery, they externalize the part which does the battery management side of things. So you can get a Huawei string inverter, but when you get a battery, you have to pay extra for the extra bit going with the battery. But it is a separate physical box, and it sits on top of the batteries itself. And there's a certain logic to it. So that's not a good example of. I want to be able to compare a string and let me see. The Growatt have. I say Growatt are probably only string inverters. I wanted to see an example of. Let me go to another wholesaler. We should see that difference. Like there is quite, there's quite a difference between the cost of a string and the cost of a. Okay, Solartricity have been on the go a good while. Okay, there we go. Solace string inverter, Solace hybrid inverter. So if we go in here, we look at a 2 kilowatt, 3 kilowatt. Let's look for our 5 kilowatt, 5 kilowatt, a 5 kilowatt hybrid. Do we have 5 kilowatt? Hang on a second. Do we have an apples to apples? We don't really. We've got a 5 kilowatt here, hybrid, 1,200 euros ex VAT. And we can see the closest one to it here, your 3 kilowatt is 478. Now you can see, if you look at the prices here, price difference between a 2 kilowatt and 3 kilowatt, it's not that great. Between a 1.5 and a 2, it's not, you don't, prices of the inverters don't double. It's not proportional to the power. So like a 5 kilowatt there would probably be up around 600, 700 euros, whereas the equivalent hybrid version is about 1,200 euros ex VAT. So add it on there. Okay, so
can we assume that these, for example, 10 kilowatt or 6 kilowatt inverters are for commercial applications only, and that they're not relevant to a residential situation?
Yes.
They're not allowed in a residential circumstance?
Well, they're allowed in a residential, like when you get connected to a network, connecting to ESP networks, right? They will have limits for standard domestic connection. And the limits will be a 25 amp, which is roughly about a 5.5 kilowatt inverter. That'll bring you up to that limit on a standard domestic connection. Now that is a simple, it's your bog standard connection. There's a form that needs to be filled in called the NC6 Network Connection 6 form, which is very simple, very quick, handled very quickly. If you want a bigger system in your home, or this happens with commercial premises as well, you'll be getting what's called an NC7 form. Now, an NC7 form, you can go beyond it. That's why you're talking about your 10 kilowatts or your 6 kilowatt, like you're talking much bigger, 30, 40, 50, up to 50 kilowatts would be handled with an NC7 form. But not like the vast majority of us here, I think, are talking about a domestic connection. So we're maxing out at 5 or a 5.5 kilowatt inverter.
Okay.
No, okay. So yeah, so as I said, price difference between string and hybrid, 600, 700 euros, like that kind of price difference. Now, one thing here's a question as well. People often ask the question, will I go for just a string inverter? Now, I'll get let's say my best value per kilowatt installed. Forget about the battery, go for the string inverter, and then we'll see how it goes. And down the road, we'll, in 3 or 4 years' time, if I decide I'm going to go for a battery, if battery prices have gone through the floor, then I'll take the hit of putting in a hybrid inverter and then putting in my battery. Then I have a string inverter, which probably won't be worth much. But you can decide to take the hit if you decide to get your best value system in now. That is where you want, you want to get your best value per lowest cost per kilowatt installed. So the lowest cost per kilowatt hour that you're producing. Now, the next level up from that would be if you say, batteries are a bit expensive, but I want to be ready for a battery. So that's where you go for a system without a battery, but with a hybrid inverter. So that you're ready. Some people do that, a kind of a suck it and see kind of a system, where they'll say, people tell me if I don't have a battery, I'll use very little of my production, but I think I might, because of whatever specific reason. Some people will say, I'm not going to get a battery first of all. I'm just going to run my system with a hybrid inverter, and then I'll run it for a year. We'll see how it goes. And if at the end of the year I see, okay, realistically, I am exporting 60% of what I'm producing, I'm not getting the kind of value, I don't have the resilience, the different arguments for the battery, then in a year's time, 2 years' time, you can put in a battery. If you have a hybrid inverter, you can add in a battery. So that is, I suppose that there are 3 ways. There's the cheapest chips, string inverter, and then if you'll take the hit in 3 years' time, or you're quite happy to work with the idea, believing the feed-in tariff will last and you'll get value for any kilowatt hours that you're exporting. The feed-in tariff will last. It won't last at the level that it's at now. That's all I'll say. Like I do say to people, just to be a bit wary about the idea of doing up your financial calculations based on the idea that you will always be getting 20 cents, 22 cents for every unit you export. I don't think that's going to last. And I wouldn't kind of put my retirement package on, like, if that was if you were comparing different kind of investment things. So that is your cheapest chips option. Halfway house is you go for a hybrid inverter, so you take a hit on the hybrid inverter, you'll be paying that 700 euros extra, but that means that in a year's time, when you see the reality of what your system is using, how much is being exported, then you can make, I suppose, a more informed decision as to what size of battery do I need. Is a 5 kilowatt hour, will it do it? Do I need a 10 kilowatt hour? It's a more informed decision, because then you're basing it on what you're actually using and generating in your own house. And then the other option is, from day one, you go in with your hybrid inverter and your battery, maybe not as big a battery as you might think of getting down the road. You may start off with a 5 kilowatt hour, even though you think, maybe next year I'll add on another 5 kilowatt hours. So there's different ways, and often coming down very simply to the financing you have available at a given time. But you can project a year, 2 years down the road if you want, and kind of go and prepare yourself, either by having a small battery or by having no battery, but with a hybrid inverter. Okay, now, anybody else have any quotes that you want to share? Even if you haven't uploaded it, if you have it there in front of you, like on your email, we can stick it into the spreadsheet, and we'll. Now, did anybody actually hear? How about can we do a thumbs up, or how do we do this? How many people actually sent out the request for quotes?
Yeah, I sent out 4, Colm, and I got back 2 so far. So I'm still waiting on 2 to come back to me.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I suppose, like, in a way, sending out quotes is cheap in that once you've written the email once, you can whether you send it to 4, send it to 6. Stick. Who did you send to, here? Just out of curiosity.
I also sent it there to Kavanagh's there in Kinbarra, and I can't remember the other one offhand now. But there was 4 off your list that were there, off your list.
Okay.
And I wanted one come back to me tomorrow. I have kind of that other course. Is it what is it again?
JFW.
JFW. Yeah, he's coming back to me actually tomorrow. He's coming out. He's actually calling to me tomorrow. So. Okay. Because I suppose, like, in terms, like, in one way, you don't want to, to be unfair to these people and to send out 15 installers, like, particularly for people if they're actually going to give you the kind of courtesy of coming out to. That's you do appreciate that, but of course, at the end of the day, I suppose it does get you to meet the person that calls out. That it gives you an idea. Yeah, but they can give you a run over your system, your house or whatever, and tell you what you may need. Like, I have a few alterations to make anyway, so that's fine. He's coming to that for me, like, so that's a good thing, So no, absolutely. Yeah, I suppose when I was saying last week, not to expect people to call out. If people call out, obviously, well and good. You will get more information, and they'll see your installation in the house. So I would say 4. Because I know some of the installers definitely will just give a price based on an email. They'll bang back there. Or did many people get results like that? Because what I'm hearing is people are calling, people are going to call out. Did many people get results where you just got an email back relatively quickly and?
Yeah, I sent off my quotes yesterday. To be honest, all of the emails that you gave, I sent an email to all of them.
Julian. No, absolutely. It's easy to do it. So there's no harm, as in they always have the right not to reply as well. There's no obligation on them.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I didn't have them all on the one, like, just one email with all of the emails on it, so they saw that I sent it to everyone. They all got their own email.
Okay.
So what were the crowd that came back?
But Comet
The
Renewable
quote I
was
gave you,
you gave me the price.
they came back to me, Future Proof are calling to me tomorrow.
Okay.
A couple came back because I forgot to put my air code in, and they said they'll give me a quote for a roof mounted system and a ground mounted system.
Okay, that'll be interesting to see the difference for similar
Yeah.
size systems for the two different types. Yeah.
But there was only the one quote, to be honest, that I actually got back, and that was like very quick this morning, and that was the mad price.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I suppose that it's easy to sound like a big price, like, you know. Like you will as well. That's the thing. When you were sending out the quotes, did you ask when? I can't remember if I said that to you, to say when can they do the installation?
Yeah, I copied and pasted. I just took out all the stuff you'd highlighted in yellow. So I took all that out, but everything else was in there.
Grand job. And did the installers come back giving tentative dates?
No dates.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I got Colm, I got that's future proof. About 4 to 5 weeks, maybe, like from the day if you accept his to do it from then, about 4 to 5 weeks probably. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Because there are some installers out there. I saw some commercial offerings there during the week, and they're giving good prices, but they said they'll install in November, December. So you know, people can kind of plan ahead, and they can try and get a body of work that's going to be coming. They know it's going to be coming in 5 or 6 months' time, and they can bring down prices for that. But obviously, if you want to get the job done faster, the idea, if you're saying future-proof 4 to 6 weeks, there are installers out there who will they won't take on work beyond that. You know, they won't have that 6 months of a backlog, and they will only do kind of, we'll say, short term. So that's, you know, I suppose in a domestic case, the idea is if you're getting a decent price, you'd be happy to get it in before the summer, and to get producing. Okay. Now, any more questions there? Because with the number of quotes we have, as I said, I'm going to do this again next Monday. Now, Monday evening, I know it's a bank holiday, but I'm saying to myself, 8:30 on a bank holiday Monday will be, you know, we'll be back in. Hopefully, we'll have more quotes there to compare. So I would like, as you're getting more results back, I would appreciate if you could stick it in there, because, you know, it lets people see what's out there in the market.
You didn't happen to find out anything about the planning regarding ground mounted systems? I know you were saying if at the front of the house you would, but I suppose the area I'd have in mind would be more to the side of the house.
Right. Now I did find out, and where did I put it?
Listen, just tell me I'm golden. That's all I need to hear. I don't need it.
It's to do with the front line of the house. If it's behind the very front of the house, then there's no issue. Up to
Okay.
25 square meters.
Okay.
So basically, not between the house and the road.
Okay.
Now, I think I thought I had gotten that figure. Where am I? I'm showing this forum here that I'm desperately trying to get people to use, and I see that I'm the only one on the planet that's using it. So, now I thought I put in an answer in there for that planning. What are the planning restrictions for ground-mounted solar PV system? There you go. That just gives you, in the answer there, it says the exemptions are up to 25 square meters. 25 square meters on the ground corresponds to about 40 square meters of a slope. So that's about a 6 kilowatt system. Now it does say, now where does it say it here? Exemptions. Minor setback distances from the edge of the roof. But what that's saying is that line across the front of the house, it's got to be some degree behind that line. Okay, so up to 25 square meters, no problem. Now, one thing I do say there as well is that I have seen plenty of ground mount systems, 8-9 kilowatt systems. No one's looking for planning permission. You know, it's not. But again, that's I haven't heard of anybody having trouble. But you know, I can't put my hand in the fire and say definitely it's not gonna happen.
Okay.
But up to 6 kilowatts, there'll be no issue there. Okay, let me see, what else could we be going over now? Any more questions or ideas there? Or else I'll have to just the idea being in the next week, if we can get more quotes and then compare more quotes.
Sorry, yeah, Colin, what's the sort of turnaround time from the completion of the project to receiving the grant? And
about 6 weeks.
And does the installer provide you with some sort of validation or certification, or does he complete anything on your behalf?
Yeah, well, a good question. Now, what happens is the different steps for the whole grant side of things. First of all, when you choose the installer, you make the grant application naming the installer. Okay, that's done online. As soon as you've agreed terms with the installer, you do the grant application. They'll get a notification saying they've been chosen to be the installer. When the job is done, then they need to upload a whole bunch of documentation describing the panels. There's to be a declaration of works form that they upload to the SEAI website. All of this goes up to the SEAI website. And then you will need to get the BER done. And you need to provide that result to the installer, who will upload it to the website, the reference for the BER. And then that's it. Like the vast majority of the work in terms of paperwork for the grant is done by the installer. But they don't provide it to you, they provide it to SEAI.
Okay.
And typically you can actually follow on there's a website. Actually, let's go and have a look at it. Website for making the grant application is in here. It's MGEN SEAI.
And is there a list of BER assessors that you could go through to find somebody to do that for you?
There is, yeah, there's an affiliate like the SEAI, they have to register with SEAI. Very often the installers will propose a BER assessor.
Oh, will they? Okay.
Because it's kind of in their interests to get it done as quickly as possible, not to be losing time that way. But you can get, I'll find it for you.
When I got the quote there when I got the quote, he said he would look after the grant and all that. He'd look after that side of things.
Okay, now, actually, there's another question. I don't know if we included that. Did he say that he would take care of the BER, actually paying? Yeah. That's included in the price.
That's included in it as well, yeah.
Okay.
I took it, yeah, but he said he'd look after the grant. I wouldn't have it. He'd apply for that and get that. Whereas the Comet one there, you have to look for the grant yourself for that. You have to pay them the money and you get your grant back yourself. Then you have to look for that. That was the difference there.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting they're exactly two types of situations you can find where you pay the amount net the grant to some installers, and to other ones you pay the gross amount, then you get the grant back. You still need to do the application though, because you have to put in your MPRN number, and that's the installer shouldn't be doing that on your behalf. But it's quite straightforward, the website. Let me go on to this is mgn.sei.ie. So if I sign in here, now I think I have an account in there, which this was a grant application account. So when you log on to that, okay, if I do, let's go through the first part of it. We can't go through it all, obviously, but just to give you an idea of the level of complexity. So when you go in there, you log on, you create an account. So that's with your email, and they'll send you a code, and you click on it, and that kind of thing. And then you come back in here when you log on and do My Applications, you'll click on Create New Application. And you create new application. Okay, to put in your MPRN. I won't be able to put it in because I've already applied. But when it checks the MPRN, checks the address, obviously you can only have one grant per meter. The MPRN is the number that you'll find. I think it's a 13-digit number, which is on the first page of your bill. And then after that, what it'll ask you for is it'll ask you for your air code. It'll ask you for to choose the installer, and it will ask you for bank account details. And the bank account details can be modified if the installer is doing it. He will put in his bank account details in that case. But in terms of the information you need the MPRN, you need the air code, you need the size of the system, because that's the grant. If if the system is less than 4 kilowatts, it has to be calculated. If it's over 4 kilowatts, it's always €2,100. And then you need to choose the installer. Okay, so it's quite straightforward. There shouldn't be an issue on that. Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Anything else that you want to go over while we're still here?
Yeah, just to take that forward. To claim the grant, then can the installer presumably you have to pay the installer the gross amount.
No. Like in the example Kieran gave there was one installer who said you would pay him the net amount, and then you can get.
Well, let's say you've agreed. Let's say you've agreed based on the gross amount, and
okay.
You then pay the installer on completion of the works, and then you can claim the grant, presumably.
Yes. Typically, the
installer is paid. The installer is paid and done.
Yeah, the installers won't upload the documentation until you pay them. That's
okay,
pretty standard.
That's what. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, Colm. Sorry, I missed all the previous meetings. I just in tonight, and is it worth doing solar panels? Say if we have bills about roughly 2,500 a year, is it worth it? Do you think?
Okay, my own feeling is that does sound that sounds quite cheap, Okay, no. Like, have you any idea from apart from the cost in terms of units of electricity that you're using?
No, I haven't checked out anything at all.
Yeah, sometimes on the bills they'll tell you what your last 12 months usage was. Like does anybody off the top of their head, can anybody compare your annual bills and see what you're talking about? Are we talking about maybe 3,000-4,000 units a year kind of thing? 2.5. What'd you say, about 2,500, was it?
Yeah, roughly, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Because if it was the case, we'd gone through. If you have a look at the video from last week, did you get the? Well, you got. I think you were one of the people that I forgot in my emailing system. So you just got the emails today, did you?
Yeah. Well, Gillian sent it on to me last night.
Okay. But in the links from last week, there's a video, and it shows the idea of for a given house. For a given size system, how much you'll be generating per year. Like my own opinion, but of course I'm biased, is that every house can do with some size solar system, whether it's a 2 kilowatt system, whether it's a 3 kilowatt system. Every kilowatt you install will probably produce around about 850-900 units a year. So if you have a smaller usage, then you don't need as big a system. You can get a cheaper system.
Yeah.
So I would say again, like I'm biased, I believe in this technology. So I will always say yes. There's a kind of a solar system for every house, I would say.
Yeah, grand job. Thank you.
Okay. Now, any more questions there? Have we anybody that feels? I suppose we're early in the day in terms of no one's gotten a large number of quotes, but is there anybody out there who says, yeah, okay, based on, for example, Future Proof Energy, say, yeah, grand, I'll call them. That'll be it. That's good to go. Or anyone, or I suppose everybody is waiting really to get a few more quotes. Wouldn't that makes a bit more sense? Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, let's take it that we'll repeat the exercise next week, hopefully with a lot more information, a lot more comparisons, and thus more questions, because obviously this is where it gets to the it's decision-making time. Once we have the information, then people decide whether they're in or not. So obviously that's where the questions will start being asked. Okay. So I would appreciate if you can stick up your quotes in that form, just so that we're sharing information with other people and people then know what prices that different companies are giving, because like in some cases people have been going for these 4 installers, someone else will go for 4 other installers. So the more information we get coming into this spreadsheet, the better it is to be able to compare the different installers. And we'll leave it at that then, if that's if we've no more questions. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Colin.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Listen, we'll talk again next week. Get the quotes in, stick them in the spreadsheet. We'll have more to talk about then next week. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right. Take care.
Thank
Have
you.
a good evening.